friends, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about a novella that is actually part of my 5-star predictions list. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it in the cards or in the end screen or in the description down below, whatever you want. But that book, or novella, is actually What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. My friend gifted this to me for Christmas, I believe, and I'm finally just now getting to it. And, you know, if I had a nickel for every time someone wrote a gothic novel regarding fungal mushrooms or fungal things, fungus, I would have 2 nickels. And it's not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. I'm sure there are more fungal related gothic novels out there, but this is the only 2 I can think of. So yeah, let's just hop in the video. But if you like these kind of videos from me, hit like, subscribe, and comment. I am slowly trying to get back into a normal uploading pace. Been a little bit hard given the fact that my wedding is in like a month. Starting off with the synopsis of the book, this is a novella. It's only about 200 pages and it's a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. This is a gothic novella, only about 200-ish pages, if that. And it is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. I'll get into toward the end of the review whether or not you need to have read The Fall of the House of Usher before reading into this, but this follows Alex Easton as they receive a letter from their best friend, Madeline Usher, telling them that she is dying. Afraid with this news means they race to their home, or Madeline's home, which is the mansion of Usher, whatever the thing they call it, and finds that the circumstances regarding her failing health and her brother Roderick's failing mental state seems to be a lot less scientific in nature. And as the days progress and as they learn more about what's going on in this home, they're realizing that there's something a little more sinister going on and that they have to figure out what's going on and how they can stop it before it threatens to take their lives and the lives of the village around them. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of this review, some trigger warnings. There is animal death and amputation. One can say that once you learn the secret, you may not be able to classify them much as an animal. But at face value, when you are first reading this book, they are of animal in presence, in idea. There's also talks of war kind of occurs off page. Alex is a retired soldier, a lieutenant of the army, so there is a lot of mentions of the war that they fought in with Roderick. There's gore, there is death, there's attempted murder, there is a little bit of misgendering in here. Alex is non-binary, and there's also a fire. But moving on to the actual review of this video, the writing. I think that the writing, T. Kingfisher does an amazing job of describing things. I could picture literally everything that was happening in the book, which is very, very hard for me to do because despite me being a very prolific reader, visualizing things is just something I struggle at. Truly it does. I do. Don't know how I've lasted this long, but I could also just really tell all of Alex's emotions throughout the book, from their disgust, their fear, their absolute exhaustion. It was very palpable throughout the book, or the novella. I felt like I was feeling the exact same emotions they were feeling, just based on how everything was being described to me and how things were kind of planning out in my head. I feel like that this writing also just helps you kind of keep in the moment. It helps you really define the gravity of the situation that's happening and how the situation is devolving and unfurling and all the fear and the concerns that come with it. I think it just really helps set the tone and keep you grounded in the moment of what's happening. You're not really wondering like, well, what's next? You're kind of stuck there going, oh, it's been beheaded and still moving. Got it. Why? And I feel like the writing just keeps everything in this like state of unsettled, which really helps us as we're all only in Alex's head and we can see Alex try to rationalize what's happening in the book and what's happening in front of them, but instead they're just getting more and more unsettled and you feel the same exact unsettledness within you as you're reading along and listening to Alex's tale. Moving on to the characters, I feel like Alex is an amazing character to follow throughout this book. Like I said in the beginning, their emotions were very palpable throughout the pages. You can just really tell how done Alex is with life. They are a lieutenant. they served in the military, they did the thing, they saw people die, they were a medic, and now here they are trying to live a quiet life, and instead their childhood best friend tells them that she's dying, and now stuck wondering why the lake is glowing in the middle of the night and there are no stars above the sky to create the glow, you know? Like, they really don't want to be solving this mystery of what's causing their friends to go crazy and then die, but they have to because they love their friends and they want what's best for them, and they do not want Madeline to die. I also feel like Alex is this very biting and sarcastic personality that can really only come from someone who has seen and been through some stuff that's just done. They're like, you know what? Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. The lake's just glowing because there's magic, you know? The mushrooms are just somewhere hidden, you know? The bunny is bunnying. It's just a very biting personality to Alex that I really enjoyed reading from a gothic novel perspective. I feel like the books I've read thus far of gothic novels, the main character is always like kind of horrified and doesn't really have like a witty response, and all Alex was witty responses and sarcasm and just disappointment in the way that everything's coming about. The Usher siblings were also just very tragic to me. Obviously, in their original iteration, they are very tragic in of itself. I believe in the ending of the original book, Madeline comes out with like sapphires in her eyes, maybe, despite being dead, and like attacks Roderick, and then the entire house like falls apart, I want to say, or am I confusing that with Fall of the House of Usher or House of Usher by Mike Flanagan? But they're very tragic siblings to begin with. You can really tell though that who they were before this event, Alex holds in very high regard. They have a lot of respect for Madeline. They have a lot of respect for Roderick, and they just have a lot of love and respect for the siblings, and you can just really tell that the people that they are being presented to at what Alex is seeing is not the people that they grew up. And I feel like Alex just holds them in really high regard and a lot of love, and you can kind of feel Alex's grief as they're watching their friends devolve, as they're watching Roderick be a shallow version of the man, a hollowed out man that they once knew, and seeing Madeline go from this fierce spirit to just kind of like this ambling body that just floats throughout the halls. And I think that grief was also very palpable throughout the page. Again, Alex's emotions were very strong in this book, and I could really feel them as I read. The minor characters too were also very fun. They also really stood out to me. I loved reading Angus and his, like, I don't want to say Irish, but his very like countryside kind of accent. I loved Denton, who was the doctor that was on site, and I loved Mrs. Potter. I was close. I didn't feel like that there was kind of along for the ride and just kind of letting things happen to them. I feel like they all kind of contributed to finding out what happened in the book and contributed to finding a solution and a way to fix their problems before everything kind of took over. These last two things I'm going to talk about are kind of the weaker points of this novella, world building being one of them. Obviously, this is a novella. It is only like 200 pages long. 150 pages. Just kidding, 160 pages. And I always say when I read novellas that, and this is just coming from someone who has written a ton of short stories for classes and short stories just in general, you always sacrifice something when you're writing in a smaller amount of prose. You only have so many words, you only have so long before you run out, and you can't waste it on certain aspects. World building happened to be one of them. So this is a pretty like kind of our world situation. The only things that we don't have that like aren't very well detailed and explained is the war that Alex and Roderick, and I'm assuming Denton and Angus have fought in. We learned that it was a very hard war. I kind of imagine it to be a little bit of like probably a mix of World War II, maybe some Vietnam in there, because we never really got like the time frame. That's kind of where I'm placing it. It's a large gap. That's kind of how I imagine the war. And then the fictional Spanish, because it apparently actually it exists, but it's not the same country. The country of Galatia that Alex is from. We see kind of almost a made-up language, lots made-up ways of referring to people. I think there's a ka and a va, which are the pronouns of this language, and that wasn't very much developed. Those two things were very developed. They were very much off-page things we just kind of had to like take in our brains and kind of throw away because it didn't really add much, which again, it's a novella. The only thing I feel like that the world building that I really enjoyed was the actual like antagonist of the book, which was the fungal growths, the mushrooms that are growing and affecting all living creatures that seem to have come in contact with it. It was very much an entity of its own, and that part was really fleshed out and developed, and I liked kind of the unknown about it, how like we don't really know where it came from, we don't really know what it's doing or why it's doing the things it's doing, but it feeds into the unsettling portion, and I feel like that was the only thing that was really developed in this kind of fictional world, this little portion, this slice of life that we're seeing of these characters. And the last thing that I feel like did come up short, because again, novella, was the pacing. I feel like the pacing was good. It definitely had the beats of a gothic novel, starting out very slow, very much introducing the vibe and like what's going on. But I feel like a lot of the action happened in very quick succession toward the very end of the book, which is very normal for a gothic novel. I'm not gonna say it's not. However, I think I'm just used to, when it comes to gothic novels, to be continuously unsettled throughout the prose. You know, from start to end, I'm never not feeling like something's going to come out at me. And I feel like there were a couple of like, not red herrings, but just like meandering along moments that we probably didn't need, or we could have developed a little more, or just like made it so it was more unsettling than not. You know, just because I feel like I was like, oh yeah, they're just trying to figure this out, and the bunny's acting a little weird, there's lights in the lake, and it just felt almost a little too fantastical and not nearly as unsettling. But once the unsettling actually does happen in the very climax of the book, then we see things kind of diverge from there and become kind of one thing after the other. But I really just wanted to be unsettled throughout the entire thing, and I feel like the pacing was the biggest issue with that book. Moving on to my overall thoughts and rating, I give this a 4.75 out of 5. Again, it's a novella. I don't think I'll ever give novellas or anthologies the full 5, because there's always going to be something missing from them. There's something's going to be lacking. There are things that I just wanted more from, which will lead to a lower rating. But I did really enjoy it, obviously. But again, the bits of the world building, I feel like we could have gone away without having to include a random Galatia, and we probably could have dived more a little bit into the war with that empty space, or just made the book a little more unsettling with the things that Alex was experiencing. Still fun. You do not have to read through The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe to watch it. You don't even have to watch the show to understand this book. I think it does stand on its own, and because the original work was even ittier and bittier than this novella, there was not much that T. Kingfisher could really like expand upon without turning it into a completely unrecognizable book. But it does follow the same beats of the short story, if I'm remembering the synopsis I read correctly. Yeah, I highly recommend it. I think it's a very fun and easy way to get into Gothic literature. It's a quick and short novel for you to really just like kind of dip your toes into and not feel super committed to a tome of a novel, as some of these books tend to be, or something that is so overly descriptive and over the top that some of these Gothic novels can be. Because I am aware, as someone who loves them but reads them very sparingly, though she wants to read more, that sometimes Gothic novels aren't always as easily accessible because of how it's written, and the themes that it's trying to portray sometimes is very, you know, so completely understand. I think this is a good way to start into it. It's short, it's sweet, not sweet, but it's like short and sweet. There's not a lot of things that you have to really concern yourself with, and you can just kind of get through it and see if you like this genre to be able to dip your toes into more. And if you like this book, you'll probably also end up liking, it's somewhere here, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, because that also deals with a random fungal growth. But that is it for my thoughts on What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I actually had a lot of fun with this book. I think I'm definitely going to be picking up Nettle and Bone by them and their other novels. I think there's another sequel of this coming out, or is out, but still. But if you like this kind of videos from me, again, hit like, subscribe, and comment. If you want to check out my predictions video from the beginning of the year, talking about my wrap-up from 2024 and the books I plan on reading this year, to see if I get a 5-star out of them, I'll leave that linked either in the cards, the end screen, or the description, probably all 3, or just 2 of them. And if you want to see any follow-ups, I think I've only read one of the books on my list this year, 2 of them this year. I will leave the playlist to my predictions follow-ups down below. But until next time, stay safe and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!